and thank you for joining us today for the ISCA ICAN webinar series, Students' Mental Health, How Mental Health Promotes Learning. Today we have Robert Stensrud from Drake University in Des Moines with us, and before I hand it over to him, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules. We're going to keep everyone on mute. We have a very large registration pool today, so we want to eliminate background noise. We are recording the webinar, and it will be available on both the ICAN and ISCA websites early next week for review. And with that, I will hand it over to Robert, and I thank everyone for joining us. Oh, sorry, one more thing. We will accept questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the question box, and I will read them to Robert as they come in and get you some answers. So now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Robert.
Great, thank you very much. Again, this is Bob Stensrud from Drake University. I will be talking about students' mental health. It's been something that we've been paying attention to in our program for several years and studying how to improve it. Our primary concern the last several years has been around the degree of anxiety that students are bringing into the school system, and also the degree of trauma that a lot of the students bring into the school system. And as I go around speaking to counselors, it's like school is in many ways one of the safest places many of these students have, which is a really sad thing to consider. But today what I'm going to talk about is how we can promote their mental health. And so the learning objectives are basically to understand the dimensions of positive mental health, to understand how mental health affects students' learning, and then to understand how learning environments can in fact promote mental health. So what can we do when the students are with us to promote mental health so that we can promote better learning? First thing I want to do is I want to say that mental health quite often is considered just asking people how they feel about things and worrying about their symptoms. And too often we take it as a way of understanding symptoms in terms of diagnostic criteria. I'm sure all of you are familiar with how we quite often listen to the symptoms that they present or the parents present, and then on the basis of that they go to a general medical professional or a psychiatrist, get put on medication, and a tremendous number of our kids today are on medication. So I'm going to talk about mental health in terms of physical, affective, cognitive, and emotional dimensions. This is how we evolved as a species. We have been physical, and we've learned as physical beings, and we've learned to connect our feelings with our bodies, and too often that is being disconnected. So we will talk about all four of these dimensions as we go through. First one is body and mental health. So what I want you to understand is that we evolved as a species by learning through movement. We need to move in order to learn. If we aren't moving, we have a much more difficult time learning. So when we have kids sit still for extended periods of time, it simply reduces their ability to learn. And we want them to have the ability to get around, to think and move at the same time, because thinking and moving go together quite closely. The next part of the body and mental health is the idea of synchronizing. So when a baby's born, they synchronize very quickly with their mothers, and both put out a hormone called oxytocin. And if you watch mothers and babies, they'll smile and they'll move together, and their bodies literally get in sync. If we were to hook them up to heart rate monitors and all these different things, we'd see that their heart rates got in sync, their breathing got in sync, and so we are really built to get in sync with people. And we can talk about that as empathy, or we can use a number of words for it, but we belong when we are in sync with people. Next time you go out with a friend to have a cup of coffee, notice how as the two of you get into your conversation, pretty soon you're picking up your coffee cup at the same time, you're nodding your heads at the same time, and you can feel when you are moving together and getting in sync. The more traumatized, the more anxious a student is, the less likely they are to get in sync. And without that sense of synchrony, they are not going to connect with you and they are not going to learn as well. So in regards to this, how do we create a classroom of kids who are in sync? Well, what we know is that the classroom will synchronize to the most active, the most flexible member of the classroom. And if that's a kid who's hyperactive, then the classroom will sync to them. So as we understand more about the body, we can understand how to create a sense of teamwork or synchrony within the class. It has to involve movement, and it has to involve moving together as a group. The next part of this is trying, and this is kind of scary for parents to realize, but the only way we learn is by failing. So if you take a little baby and lay them on their back and have them try and roll over, what they'll do is they'll roll to one side a little bit and then roll back. They'll roll to the other side a little bit and then roll back. Finally, they'll learn to rock both ways until they can roll on their stomach. So the way they learn is by trying and failing. When we put kids in a situation where they're afraid to fail, they're also afraid to try. And again, without trying, they're not going to learn. Finally, in terms of the body, we join together. So this is very much like the idea of synchrony. We join together as a team. We join together by forming our social groups. And I need to have what's called a bonded network. I need to join with people that I can trust and that I feel have my back. So we can watch kids. The way I learned this way back at the State Mental Health Institute in Independence when I was a counselor there was a psychiatrist told us it's better to be wanted for murder than not to be wanted at all. And if nobody wants me, I will do something to be wanted. I want to join. I'm a social being. My body wants to be around other people and play and dance and move. And without that group to join, I become isolated, withdrawn, and then it's much more difficult for me again to learn, to be part of the learning community. And the way I will tend to respond is I will just withdraw. So without having a place to join, I will physically withdraw. And I've gotten stories of teachers who say kids will come to the front door of the school. They'll be so anxious that they can't go into the school. They will just stop right there and freeze. So the joining is the feeling of being welcomed, the feeling that I can be inside and be wanted somewhere. So in terms of the body, basically what I'm saying is that our bodies are how we fundamentally learn. Without being connected to our bodies, we are not going to learn nearly as well. The next slide is about feelings in mental health. And here the idea of feelings is how do I feel connected? And so what happens for me, again, when I'm with my mother, what I learn is that we get in sync because of this hormone oxytocin. And she and I bond and we get in sync and we smile together and we play together. And then pretty soon somebody else comes into the picture and I learn how to do the same with them. And then pretty soon the family's around me. And the bonding idea is I have a place to come to. There is a place, like Robert Frost said, that when I go there, they have to take me in. So my bonded network are those people who welcome me. Think about how many kids don't have that. Think about the number of kids that have no home, that have no place, that when they go there, they have to take them in. So there's been a lot of talk about the school to prison pipeline. And unfortunately, for too many kids, the only place that when they go there, they have to take them in is prison. So I'm going to bond somewhere. I'm going to find some stable place that I can feel like I belong. And too often, schools offer an oasis for that. And if I can't find it at home, if I can't find it in school, there will be an institution somewhere. So what we see, maybe you've seen this had this experience yourself. We have kids who complain about school all the way through, and I hate school, and then right before it's time to graduate, they do something to screw up. Because school is what they know. School is what they've bonded to, and no matter what they say, in the long run, they would rather stay in school than leave. We get that as counselors. We have clients for an extended period of time. It's time for them to go. It's time for them to get back to their lives. And the fact that we say we don't need to see you anymore is felt by them like rejection. And so they will do things to get to come back to their counselor, even if it means intentionally failing. So when I'm bonding, I have these people that I feel close to. There are a couple different kinds of bonds. One kind of bond I call the 24/7 people in my life. Are there people that if you call them at 3 o'clock in the morning and they have caller ID and pick up the phone anyway, that's a 24/7 friend. That's a 24/7 bond. Do your kids have such a relationship? Do they have somebody that in the middle of the night, if they need to talk to someone, there's someone who's willing to do it? Again, too often we're finding that that is not the case. So your 24/7s are those people that are really, really close to you. The next group are your friends. So your friends are folks that maybe they don't pick up the phone, but they are people that you know you can interact with very well. And so when we talk about a bonded network, we talk about a number of different factors. Reciprocating is one of those factors. If I do something for you, will you do something for me? The more we do things for each other, the more we bond. So reciprocating is really a big part of figuring out who I can bond with and who I can't. If I'm doing things for other people and they don't respond, then I don't have that sense of bonding. If other people do things for me and I can't do anything back because I'm just taking what they're giving me, I don't have a sense of what's called social capital. I don't feel like I'm worthwhile. So reciprocating is both you doing things for me and you feeling that I have enough value that you ask me to do things for you. Again, with many kids that we've worked with, we see that yes, they have people who do things for them, but the people don't see enough value in the kid to ask them to do things back. So now all of a sudden I'm not wanted. If people don't see any value in me to want something from me, then what am I? And then it's back to it's better to be wanted for murder than not to be wanted at all. So reciprocating is key to bonding. I need to feel like I have value and you ask me for things. I have to feel like if I ask you for something, you will do it for me. I don't want to go around asking people for help and have them say no, because then I'll just quit asking. I don't want to have people who just do things for me and see no value in me, so I'll just withdraw. So reciprocating is a big part of creating those bonds and the feeling of being valued. The idea of sharing is pretty close to that. Another word for that is redundancy. How often do we interact? I have friends that I interact with a lot, and so I feel closer to them. We share more. We get together, we do things together, we have all sorts of different activities such as going out to eat or just watching TV together. The more we share, the more we feel like we're forming this bond. If I don't have anyone to share with, then my mental health deteriorates and I become more and more withdrawn. So the more I withdraw, the more I become a victim of my negative thoughts, of my lack of feeling connected to people. And so this is how I start losing out. I want to have people to share with. I want to have people to hang out with. If I don't have people to hang out with, I will find people. even if those are people who are taking advantage of me. Finally, trusting. So if we reciprocate and if we share a lot, then it's much more likely that we can trust each other. And if I can trust you, then I can go into the world with a greater sense that I can take risks, that I can fail. So the way to feel safe failing is to trust the people around me that they won't make fun of me, that they will pick me up if I fall down, that they will be there for me. So this is how the body and the feeling start going together. I have to trust in order to take risks. I have to take risks, I'm going to fail. If I'm going to fail, I need to have the confidence that someone will be there for me. Without that, I'm not going to take risks. I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to learn, and I'm just going to withdraw more and more. So this is basically the issue that we run into with many of our kids, is that at a feeling level, they don't feel like they, for lack of a better word, belong anywhere. I have nobody I'm close to. I have nobody that values what I have to say. I have nobody to just hang out with. And so I can't trust that I can try and function in the world. What we're looking for is ways to have some place somewhere that I can bond with someone. And that bonding can allow me to reciprocate, to share, and to learn to trust. We would like to have it be the family. We would like to have it be the parents. Sometimes that's not the case. In many cases, the person that they trust most is their teacher or their counselor in school. School offers this oasis, and I know that you'll be there for me. Every day I come in, you're going to be there for me. But think about this as an educator or a counselor. I can say to kids, yes, I will be there for you. This is my job. I will be there for you. But if you're the only person I can trust, and you say, I will be there for you, what happens if you change your job? What happens if you go on medical leave? So there's a student here who lost a very important family member at the beginning of her junior year. She was devastated. That was a key person that she relied on as a sense of bonding, somebody that would always be there for her, always hug her, always take her in. And she went to school. The school counselor said, I will be there for you. I will always be there for you. You can trust me. Let me show you that you can bond with someone else. But it was close to the end of the school year, and at the end of the school year, the counselor got a job and moved. So instead of helping relieve the trauma, the counselor in the long run re-traumatized the student because they offered a level of trust that was beyond what they should. We as professionals have boundaries. Our boundaries say, yes, we can trust. We can say to people, you can trust me up to this point, but understand it's my job to do this. These are my roles. So in terms of promoting feelings of mental health in our students, we need to be clear on our boundaries. We can bond only so far. We can reciprocate only in certain ways. We can share only in certain ways. And you can trust us only to this extent. Without a clear sense of those boundaries, quite often students, without any other sense of a place called home, they'll make us into a parent in their mind. And then we may very well create a situation where we are doing more harm than good. I feel like I'm talking fast. I mean, if people have questions, feel free to answer them. I'm used to live audiences where people interrupt me all the time, so feel free to interrupt me if you want to. The next topic is thoughts and mental health. So if you go back to the body and how the body learns by moving and doing, that's our right brain. So the right hemisphere of our brain is really our intuitive part. It's the part that connects to our bodies. It develops first. And so we are, at the beginning, just a body that bonds with other people, bonds with other things. We don't learn the difference between mom and dad until, like Piaget talks about, we create new schemata. We learn to name things. So instead of it just being me when I'm an infant, pretty soon it's me and mom. And then it's mom and dad. And then it's mom, dad, siblings, whatever. So thoughts are the way that we put order and safety and some sense of understanding onto the world that our right brain, that our bodies can't do. Here's an example of that. So when we had 2 little kids and 2 dogs, and we would walk them, one kid in the stroller, one walking beside us, and on our walk there was a place where people had a big mean black lab that would come tearing up to the fence, barking and growling at us. So it scared the kids and it scared the dogs, so that we would have to go across the street rather than stay walking on the sidewalk. So it came to the point that we would always get so close, and then we'd cross the street, get past the dog, and then come back. The people moved. Now there's no dog there. We would go up to the point of that house, and the kids and dogs would insist on going across the street. But we could say to the kids, no, the dog is gone. Those people moved. And the kids would go, oh. So now we could take the kids right by that house, and they didn't care. The dogs didn't have that ability, so they still insisted on going across the street. So the fact that we can name things gives us a sense of how to frame them as dangerous, as safe, as good, as bad. Naming becomes a key process in saying what is healthy and what is not healthy, what is good, dangerous, and so on. We take the feelings that generate in our right hemisphere, put a name on them, then we have a richer way of understanding the world. The next part, though, is about attributing. So we make attributions with this naming process. The longest series of research we have is in terms of locus of control. So an external locus of control is a person who attributes the things that happen to them to events outside their control. I'm externally controlled. Fate, chance, powerful other people determine what's going to happen to me. So all of my attributions, when I name something, I attribute to it that they control it. An internal locus of control, on the other hand, attributes things to stuff that's in their control. Hi, I can control this. I can choose what to do. So now, instead of saying that my life is controlled by other people, I can say, I choose how to respond to events around me. That difference in attribution comes out in different names. If I name it as an external locus of control, I'm always talking about how that's controlling me. This is making me do that. How many times do you have people say to you, well, I have to do this, or I was told to do that? That's an external locus of control attribution. An internal, instead, would talk about what I'm choosing to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. So they're making attributions that show that they feel like they have power and choices. They're naming their world in such a way that they are actors on it rather than recipients of forces they can't control. The classic study on this is a study that they did on women taking birth control pills. And the women who were external locus of control said, well, whether I get pregnant or not is beyond my control, so they took their pills whenever they thought of it. The women who had an internal locus of control would say, I can choose if I want to get pregnant or not. I will take the pills as I'm supposed to, and you can guess who got pregnant more often. And if the externals got pregnant, they would, of course, attribute it to something other than their choices. It's not that I made a mistake. It's, oh, I knew something beyond my control would happen. So my attributions really shape my ability to know that I have some kind of power in my life. Let's put that into the context of planning now. An external will say, well, what's the use of planning? I can't plan. Things are going to happen that are outside my control. An internal will say, yes, I can plan. I can sit down and say, this is what I want to be, and this is where I'm going. What we want to do is we want to create an environment in which people see that they are internals, that they look at the world in terms of what is in their control, what is not, in a more practical way, and then they can plan. You've heard many times about how this planning part of your brain, that's your prefrontal lobes, right up in front in the neocortex, your planning brain develops slowest, and it is not really fully functional until your mid-20s or so. But special ed teachers will tell you about the idea of executive functions. There are skills that evolve over time that kids can learn the basics of planning, the basics of thinking ahead as young as little kids. Best example of early childhood planning is playing peekaboo. So you disappear and the kid plans that you will come back. So we see early on that we can plan as long as we have some degree of control and understanding that the world is not arbitrary around us. If I can plan, I can focus my learning. If there's nothing to plan for, if the world's outside my control, what's the use of learning anything? Things are just going to happen to me. So what we look for in terms of thoughts in mental health is, are we naming things accurately? Are we calling them what they are in a way that we can decide to choose which is within my control and which is not? So my attributions are more realistic. The more realistic my attributions, the more effectively I can plan. The more effectively I can plan, the more targeted I can go out and say, I will learn this because this is what I want to learn. So we want our thoughts and our feelings and our behavior, our bodies to be all connected in this. And then finally, emotions, okay? So we'll go back to the idea of expectations. I expect certain things based on my experience. They talk about mirror neurons in the brain. When I grow up, I see certain things happen. When I smile at mom, mom smiles back. Or when I smile at mom, mom turns away or frowns or ignores me. I learn from those early childhood experiences what to expect out of life. If I can't learn what to expect, if the world is unpredictable, I never really get a sense of feeling safe and secure. If the world is dangerous, if people take advantage of me, if I'm traumatized as a little kid, then what I expect is I expect that everyone is out to hurt me. So my early experiences shape my emotions and what I expect in the future. Do I expect the world to be dangerous? Do I expect the world to be kind? Do I expect people to be nice to me? Do I expect people to ignore me? We develop these expectations over time from when we're quite little. Many of our expectations are shaped by the time we're 18 months old. So it's that early that we start to shape our expectations. From these expectations, we make attributions. So I'm going to look at you and you're going to remind me of somebody that I knew, and I'm going to attribute to you the same intentions that I attributed to that other person. All right? So you look like somebody I know. This is how they treated me. I assume you're going to treat me the same way. In neurological terms, we call it theory of mind. So the theory of mind is that my expectations shape what I think is going on in your head. If you have a certain look on your face, my theory of mind says, well, this is what you're feeling. This is what you want to say to me. So my attributions shape, again, all of my treatment of you. If you look like somebody I didn't like, I'm going to immediately assume that I'm not going to like you. If you look like somebody I could trust, I'm going to immediately trust you. You can watch these attributions on kids' faces. When you walk into a room and they look at you, you can watch their body language, you can watch their faces. All of these nonverbal cues that they give off will tell you what attributions they're putting on you. Are they attributing to you someone that they will like, someone they don't like? If whatever that initial attribution is, it will be difficult to change. So the more you can come in and be accepted and have attributions be positive, the more likely you are to create a functional relationship. Which leads us to the next thing, triggers. Triggers are those unconscious responses to things we don't even know we're responding to. So with a trigger, I have learned over time through classical conditioning, through traumas, that if I see this, I've got to do this. And it's purely automatic. It doesn't even become a thought. It's so unconscious that a trigger happens in a fraction of a second before we can put words on it, before we can even think about it. So if you go up to a stove and you reaching for it and see that the coils are red, you pull your hand back before you even touch it, before you even think about it. If you hear a loud noise behind you, you have a startle response and turn around without even thinking about it. Triggers are those things that we are programmed for, our bodies are programmed for, to respond automatically to be safe. Robert Sapolsky wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the stress response in zebras resulted from if they saw a lion or heard a lion, they would immediately run to safety. So the trigger was some cue that said, there's a lion ready to eat me. The immediate response without any thought is to run as fast as they could. What happens with that is the way our stress response works is if there's a trigger, I generate a lot of stress hormones, I run, and I get rid of those stress hormones. If I get triggered, but I can't run away, if I can't get rid of those stress hormones physically, I just stay stressed. And so if something triggers me and I can't move, all I do is sit there and feel increasingly stressed. Can't learn, can't do anything. I'm in this fight, flee, freeze response and can't go beyond that. So what we're looking for is the degree to which you can self-regulate. To what degree are we able to self-regulate and put words on things? Oh, that was a trigger, but it's really safe so I can relax. To make all our expectations and attributions something that allow us to step back from that automatic stress response and be calmer. So far I've talked about the different dimensions of mental health, and so now what I'll do is I'll talk about what we can do, and you can see the degree to which this does or does not occur in school systems. First thing I'm going to say is that the body movement is critical. We have to promote movement. We don't need to promote running around the classroom. We need to promote being able to move. Get out of my chair. When I do these presentations face-to-face, I teach specific different exercises that we can do real simply to get the brain processing, to get the brain unstuck. So we can start the class by doing a couple of physical exercises. Every once in a while to take a break, we'll do a few physical exercises, but just allowing me to move because, again, I learn by moving. So what can we do to promote movement? When we think that we are teaching kids so much stuff that we don't have time for recess, we are doing the kids and ourselves a disservice. Without the movement, the body is not ready to learn, and if the body's not ready to learn, the brain's not going to do it. The next issue is feelings. We want to promote a safe environment. Well, to what extent do we have a safe environment? What we're looking for is more than us thinking it's safe. Do the kids feel it's safe? The more unsafe the environment I come from, the less safe I'm going to feel. I'm going to come into the world feeling like I'm not safe. So I'm going to do things that demonstrate I don't feel safe. And some of those things are going to reduce the safety of people around me. I'm going to come in looking for everything to be threatening, and I'll respond physically to things that are threatening. So what we're looking for here is we're looking for ways to promote movement that involves synchrony, that involves the ability to join together, to collaborate, to work together. The more I work with people, the more I dance with people, for example, the safer I feel with them because I've gotten in sync with them. The more we have activities that keep us physically in sync, the more I feel connected to and safe with the people around me. The less I do that, the less in sync I feel with other people, the less safe I feel. So for my feeling's sake, I want to go in and I want to move with people, I want to engage with people, join, play, whatever with them until I feel like I can trust them and feel safe. Again, though, the kids who don't feel safe at home are going to be the ones who come in and feel least safe in school, and they will cope with that by being the ones who create the more dangerous school settings. So what I want to do as a teacher or counselor is I want to know which kids display lack of synchrony, lack of a sense that they're safe here, because they would be the ones that I would want to work with to help them feel safe before they engage in behavior that makes everyone less safe. Thoughts, what we're trying to do is promote positive self-talk. Oh, you know the kids. They come up front and you say, well, this is how you did on the exam. And they say, oh, I'm so stupid, or I can't do anything right, or oh, I never know how to do this. The more I talk in those terms, the more I reinforce this negative self-image of myself. So in terms of thoughts, what we want to do is we want to move more toward an internal locus of control that is planning oriented. So I didn't do that well on this exam, but I see what I could have done differently. Or I did really well, I could do better. So my thoughts, my positive self-talk is more about my feeling of confidence and in control first. And if I feel like I'm confident and in control, then I can plan for how to improve in the future. The more negative self-talk I engage in, the less likely I am to think that what I do would make any difference. And if nothing I do makes a difference, then why learn, why think, why be engaged in the school whatsoever? Then finally, emotions. I talked about triggers, and for zebras, lions roaring and chasing them is a bad trigger. But we also have happy triggers. Okay, if you've had a bad day, you can go home to someone who loves you and say, I need a hug, and they'll hug you, and that's a very happy trigger. There are other happy triggers. Being with people that you are bonded with and having time to relax with. Having people give you positive comments. Having people point out your strengths. The more happy triggers we create around ourselves, the more we can start altering that self-image, those expectations, that low control. One thing we do wrong is we tend too often to use global positive statements, like, oh yes, you always do so well, you're so smart, and so on. If you think about it, those global positive comments really are not promoting an internal locus of control. They're just, in many ways, making me feel less in control because, well, I guess I'm smart, so it doesn't matter. So happy triggers are specific positive reinforcers. You did very well on this exam because you did this. And so our happy triggers have to be more targeted, more direct, and promote positive self-talk, promote the ability to plan, which promotes the interest in learning more. So if we think about it like that, how do we create concrete, goal-directed, happy triggers? Oh, where did I go? So that was the last slide. Wow, I'm used to having more slides than this. Let's see, we have, it's 11:41. If people have questions or comments, please feel free. What I'm trying to convey is a sense that we need to understand how our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, and our emotions all are key to us learning. And if any part of that is not brought into the school, learning is going to be less likely to happen. Unfortunately, we are, in many cases, the oasis, the only oasis in some of these kids' lives. And there's only so much we can do because we have to have boundaries. But on the other hand, we can't just do nothing. So this was kind of a very brief overview of the kinds of things that we can do to help kids learn. Questions, comments?
I do have a question regarding the recording of the webinar. Yes, we are recording this webinar, and it will be available early next week on both the ICAN and ISCA websites. If anyone has questions, please feel free to type them into the question box now. How can teachers increase an internal locus of control?
Okay, so the internal locus of control is an expectancy. And a broad expectancy such as, oh, you're smart, really does not do me much good because of something called failure tolerance. You know kids who are so smart that they get really good grades no matter what. But then if they ever do hit a wall and fail, they can't handle it. So an internal locus of control has a sense of optimism. Yes, I can do it. An ability to think ahead and plan, so I know what kinds of things to pull together to make it happen. But then also a failure tolerance. If I get knocked down, I can get back up again. And so I want you to have optimism. I want you to believe in yourself. I want you to be able to see what is and is not within my control. I want you to be able to use that to plan. And I want you, if you get knocked down, to get back up again. I mean, I think of so many folks that begin their first semester of their freshman year in college. They're so used to getting good grades without studying, and all of a sudden they flunk. And what do? Can they get back up again, or do they just stay laying on the ground?
Okay, next question. Any further thoughts on how this may relate to social media?
Oh my God. I am really lucky to be old. I'm glad I did not live in the world of social media. I think one of the things we want an idea of resilience. So how can I have an internal locus of control? How can I have a bonded network of people that I can trust? How can I really feel like I'm okay? But then part of that is developing the judgment to know who is within my bonded network and who isn't. Who can I trust? Who can I not trust? And don't join things that involve people I can't trust. I know that's terrible. I mean, we've got doing something here in Johnston. They gave me a list of all of the apps that kids have that they use and their parents don't know about. And that's where the broken kids, the kids who come from the most traumatic backgrounds, are the ones who are the bullies. They're the ones who are mean, and they will find ways to be mean. So the best thing for me to do is to have the judgment to know who to stay away from. And it's kind of back to the zebras and the lions. Don't go walking into a lion pride because the odds of you getting eaten are better. So how do I have good judgment as to who to belong to and who not to. And then think about your kid. I mean, the victims of social media are the kids who don't feel like they belong anyway. They're the ones that the bullies like to pick on, and they're also the ones who walk into these things without thinking. So help me form a bonded network of people I can trust so I know how to tell the difference between trustworthy and not trustworthy. Because the social media is going to be there, and I've just got to improve my judgment as to what to belong to and what not to.
How do we help those lions?
How do you help the lions? Oh man, you know, that becomes a longer story, but I will say that one of my favorite books is called The Whole Brain Child. And what you do is you engage in trauma-based therapy. When I've worked with lions, really what I had to start with is just say, tell me your story. And they want to tell their story, but there are parts of it that their brains have just shut down because they're so traumatized. And if I feel broken and don't know what else to do with it, I'm going to lash out. These are the kids who, you know, the Columbine kids and the kids who bring guns, but it's also the little bullies and the microaggressions that go on throughout the school. So if I see a bully, as much as I want to smack them, the idea is to just sit down and say, tell me about yourself. You can talk to me about your feelings. And as you talk to me about your feelings, I'm going to find out that there are really ugly things that have happened to you, and you don't know what to do with it, so you just act out. That's your fight, flee, freeze brain taking over. I'm going to use this as a metaphor. This is something that works with the students. I'll see if it works with you. Imagine you're lying on your back on the floor and somebody sits on you so that you can't breathe. What you'll do is you'll flail around and you'll do anything you can to get them off your chest so you can breathe. Many of these lions are just people doing whatever they can to get somebody off their chest. Okay, they don't know how else to react to the traumas they've experienced. And so they need to learn to get in touch with the trauma and then find different ways to process it, cope with it, and so on. Every lion I've met has been traumatized.
Okay. Next question. Is there an age that any of this is irreversible?
Nope. Neuroplasticity is what you want to Google. Neuroplasticity, we didn't think it existed, and so people who used to have strokes, we'd say whatever is lost, and now we see that people can recover from strokes no matter how old. We can see that people can recover from trauma no matter how old. We can watch it in their brain scans. We can watch it in their behavior. The best book is probably called The Body Keeps the Score, because he's done a lot of therapy with traumatized folks, and he will show all the different things that he's done. There are body therapies, counseling therapies, and so on. So The Body Keeps the Score is a very good book to show you how that really is not the case. But I will say that the younger you are when you experience the trauma, the more difficult it is to get over it. So we have kids who experience traumas before they verbally can name things, and it's much more difficult before the age, traumas before the age of 3 are much more difficult to overcome than traumas to adults.
Okay. Next question. Can someone who has trauma in their early 20s be more apt to have an external locus of control, and how do they change that as an adult?
Not necessarily. I think externals are more likely to feel traumatized because they don't feel like they can do anything about it. So with resilience, okay, the idea of resilience is about recovery time. So I'm driving along and so my girlfriend dumped me when I was a sophomore in college. I thought we were going to get married. I thought everything was going to be fine. She dumped me. So the issue of resilience is how long did I walk around feeling sorry for myself before I got over it? And an external locus of control takes longer to get over it, but we can all get over it if we're resilient enough. I've been lucky to work in rehabilitation counseling where I've worked with people with terminal diseases, tragic car accidents, and once they get it into their head that they can get knocked down and get back up again, they can do it. Broken Open is a book full of people talking about traumas and how they used the traumas and their recovery to feel stronger and say, you know, I'm really kind of glad it happened to me because it's made me the person I am today.
Okay. Next question. What is a good way to rebuild trust and develop the bond when a fourth grader's mind has decided that you can't be trusted due to faulty thinking?
Oh gosh. Slow. Okay. Back to the dimensions. Part of it is really just their bodies don't know how to get in sync with you. So just doing things, you know, if I had you here, I could show you, but there are ways that you can observe a person's body and you can just kind of sway with it, move with it, use the same gestures, use the same facial expressions. So to begin with, you just have to physiologically see how to get in sync with their bodies by movement, by gestures, facial expressions, and so on. And you'll be able to tell when that works because their eyes will change, their whole face will change. Their face will soften, their eyes will soften, they'll relax more, their breathing will become deeper and slower. So there are a number of cues that their bodies put off when it feels like it can begin to trust you. You start with the body and you just listen. Let them tell your story. Again, the book, The Whole Brain Child, will show how to stay in their right brain until they're comfortable and then help them move to their left brain and then back to their right brain. So the more untrusting they are, the more difficult it is, but it begins with the body, then with listening, then with asking good questions.
All right, our final question. What are more in-depth trainings that you offer?
Oh, good Lord. I don't know. I spend all my time teaching graduate classes. Right now, I have a weekend class called Trauma and Crisis Counseling, and I've had people ask me about it, and I've said, just come on in. So I guess I've just been having people show up at my door, basically. I've not done anything structured. I am doing something now with Johnston during their professional days, and so I've gone there every month this year doing more in-depth stuff. Otherwise, I've just gone and done a couple-hour thing here, a couple-hour thing there with different schools, or else had people show up and ask me questions.
Okay. On that note, I've had several requests if people would be able to contact you with questions. Sure.
Email robert.stensrud@drake.edu. If you've got my last name, good. If you don't, it's STENSRUD. If you're an old Iowa State football fan, you'll know how to spell it. So it's robert.stensrud@drake.edu. Email is by far the best way to reach me because I'm not in the office very much. I'm in meetings or running here and there.
Okay. Well, we have lots of thank yous coming in. Thank you for the valuable information. Thank you for your time. So with that, I want to say thank you again to Bob for joining us and giving us all this great information. And we will, again, have the recording up early next week for review. And that concludes our webinar for today. So thank everyone for joining.
Thanks, everybody.